I'd like to introduce to you Niang Hangzo, my fellow board member who comes here all the way from California, and I'm going to let her speak for herself. Thank you, Niang.
Good afternoon. My name is Niang Hangzo, and I'm originally from Imphal, Manipur. I'm also a member of the Paite tribe, like Florence, which is one of the tribes of the Kuki-Zomi-Hmar. India is a small border state at the extreme east of India. Sorry, Manipur is a small border state at the extreme east of India, and it borders Myanmar. Manipur has two distinct physical features: a lush valley in the middle, surrounded by hilly ranges on all directions. The hill ranges are ancestors' home of more than 30 tribes. These tribes have been classified as Kukis and Nagas. The non-tribal Meiteis live in the valley. The projected population of Manipur is 3.6 million, and Meiteis constitute 53%. The Kukis, only 16%. The Meiteis hold 40 out of 60 seats in the state assembly, thus giving them majority to pass any bills without any objection, despite objection. This is a demographic map of Manipur. The green area is where the Nagas predominantly live. The blue, a little bit on top and at the south, are the Kuki-Zomi-Hmars, and the Meitei is the orange area in the valley, and the white is mixed ethnicities. The capital of Manipur is in Imphal, and it is in Imphal that you have Manipur universities, vocational institutes, technical institutes, sports centers, hospitals, higher seats of learning. Any sort of facilities and services and healthcare is concentrated in Imphal, in the capital. And that's the reason why the state's budget, 98% of it is consumed in the valley, leaving 2% for the hills. And that's also the reason why tribals from the hills come and settle in Imphal, so that they can have access to education, healthcare, and services that is not available in the hills. And some are moved to the valley and settle, like my parents, because they worked for the government of Manipur, and they had no choice but to settle there because they're pushed by the government to work there. However, Meiteis cannot buy land in the hills. Tribal lands is protected by Article 371C of the Indian Constitution. Since Manipur became a full-fledged state, with 40 seats out of the 60 in the state assembly, the Meitei majority and their chief ministers, multiple chief ministers, independent of which political party they belong to, had tried to pass many bills to usurp tribal lands. And all this, even if the tribals contested, they could pass because of the majority. The Constitution of India has given provision for autonomous governance to the tribal in Manipur and to all the tribals in Northeast. And this is in effect in all Northeastern states except in Manipur. The 6th schedule, which is the provision, is not in effect in Manipur. Tribal areas are in the border, and Moreh, the little dot out there, the red dot, is the current hub of international trade. Though it is in a mixed district, it is dominated by Kukis. Tribal lands are strategically located to become international trade corridor under the central government's Act East policy. My mother was never alone in Imphal. On the land my parents bought in the 60s, there are 4 homes and 4 generations of Hangzos. My mother's children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are all at shouting distance. Honestly, I don't want to be here. I'd rather be in Manipur visiting my mother, eating mangoes straight from the trees in our family compound. But I cannot. My family does not live in Paite Veng, Imphal anymore. This is a view of Paite Veng, a tribal neighborhood in Imphal, where 60 Paite and Vaipe tribes people live. You can see our house very close to the highway. In the front is the first house, and there's the Guite house, which is Florence's house. Florence is my neighbor. This is where she lives. Our parents lived, and there is our church. I'm showing this because it's important for everyone here to know that this tribal location or locality is surrounded by Meitei neighborhoods all around. On the night of May 3rd, 2023, around 8:30 in the evening, Meitei mob, hundreds of men and women armed with iron rods, stones, and Molotov cocktails, stormed into our neighborhood shouting, "Kill cookies, kill cookies." My mother, my brother Biak and his wife, their 18-month-old son, my sisters Tara and Junior, my nephew Jason and his mother from another house in our compound, my nephew Michael from the first house, his dog Charlie, and 2 puppies, cowered in my mother's bedroom with the lights off and prayed fervently. Next door, my brother Lian and his family and Michael's mom also barricaded themselves in one room and prayed for deliverance. Among them were my brother's 3 granddaughters, one of whom was only 1 year old, and the other 2, 4 and 11 years old, respectively. The mob started pelting stones, window panes shattered, and the incessant thud of stones hitting our concrete roof and walls assaulted their ears. They could hear the mobs hollering and shouting profanities against cookies. It seemed to go on forever. Finally, the thuds were replaced by the sound of 100 footsteps slowly damping. The hollering and shouting grew fainter and fainter. They were relieved. They thought it was over. My family thought they were safe. My 16-year-old nephew, Jason, went up to the first floor of our house, but came down quickly. "They have set the church on fire. I can see the flames." It was then they knew they had to leave. This was no ordinary attack. In the history of Manipur, never were churches burned, ever. But where would they go? They were surrounded by Meitei neighborhoods in all directions. My sister called her brother, and he said they had taken refuge in the neighbor's compound. He told them, "Come quickly before the mobs return." While the rabid mob was busy engrossed in burning the church, my family ran next door through the door in the fence between the 2 compounds. They took refuge in a hotel that was managed by a Meitei man, and he and his workers welcomed them. From the hotel, they could see their houses burning. They could hear the sound of the gas cylinder burst. And with every burst, there was a sound of a jubilation and exultation from the mob. For hours, they watched. The children didn't dare to cry. They were too frightened. Eventually, the police escorted 20 members of my families and other people who were sheltering in that hotel. And that included my 86-year-old mother, a disabled sister, and 4 children, 3 under the age of 5, through a hostile mob that were seething and itching to harm them. Some among the mob said, "Do not hurt them," because they knew my mother and they knew our family. We had lived there in that neighborhood for 60 years. For hours, they had witnessed the destruction of their homes, their church, their neighborhood. They watched flames leaping from windows, heard loud boom of gas cylinders exploding, accompanied by the cries of the rabid mob. The mob went from house to house, leaving carnage and mayhem. At every home, they looted and torched. This was on May 3rd night. The mob came back to Paite Veng, our neighborhood, on May 4th and finished what they started. Eventually, my family of 4 generations, 86-year-old mother and children, Her children, her grandchildren, and great-grandchildren were transported in bulletproof trucks, accompanied and guarded by soldiers, and taken to army camps. My family spent 3 harrowing nights and days in the army camp until we could evacuate them outside to a different state for their safety. However, this story is not ours alone. Many Kuki-Zomi-Hmar families suffered and suffered worse. The last year, my mother turned 87 in exile. She suffered from dengue fever in the summer and endured respiratory challenges in the fall, unused to the inclement and unfamiliar weather in her temporary home. She longs to return home. When I talk to her, she says, "I want to die in my own home, surrounded by my children." And I don't know what to tell her because it's been 1 year. In the beginning, we thought it would end after a month, after 2 months, but it has been a year and still we don't have an answer. Their story is not unique. All Kuki-Zomi-Hmar families in Imphal areas endured attacks on May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Many lost lives or suffered serious injuries. Many still languish in camps with inadequate facilities, multiple families sharing tight spaces, enduring food shortages, and other indignities. Despite losing everything, I am grateful today because my family members are safe and they are healthy. Like I mentioned, there are many other families that endured worse. Dongxing Hangxing was only 7 years old. He was living in an army camp, already sheltering in an army camp when he was caught in a crossfire. On June 4th, the army doctor said he has to go to the hospital. So Dongxing Hangxing, his mother, and her friend were all sent in an ambulance to the hospital, and they were sent with an escort, police escort. At a locality called Iroishemba, on the way to the hospital, an enraged Meitei mob led by the Meira Paibis, a civil societies of women, launched a brutal attack. The police convoy deserted them as the mob descended on them. The mob set the ambulance on fire. Young Dongxing Hangxing, Mina, and Lydia were trapped within the burning ambulance, and they were killed. This touched me because Dongxing Hangxing is a child from a Meitei mother and a Kuki father, just like me. This also disturbed me because he was killed not by militants, but by ordinary women. This is a tale of 2 tribal women, Don Ngaching versus Lucy Murray. Don Ngaching is a Kuki-Zomi-Hmar. Lucy is Naga. On July 6th, a mentally challenged Kuki-Zomi woman, Don Ngaching, was fatally shot in Kwakaithel, which is near my home. The Meira Pabis, the women's group, got her on her way to our house and handed her over to the Arambatengal who shot her. Don Ngaching is my cousin's sister. She has been suffering mentally for many years, and it was only after her parents died that she became homeless. She left. Until her parents were alive, they kept her home. And she had fled from Lamka, she had wandered around for many years and ended up in Imphal. When carnage broke out on May 3rd, May 4th, May 5th, she had no idea that it was dangerous, and she didn't leave. Even when my family found themselves in the camp, they tried to reach her through her neighbors. She was kept in a shed by the church, a makeshift house in the church, and the Naga neighbors went to find her and told her to leave, but she refused because she did not realize the danger of the situation. Lucy Mering was also mentally challenged. She was shot on July 15th. Don Ching was shot on July 6th. By July 16th, the murderers of Lucy was already apprehended. Same crime, different justice. No justice for Kuki-Zomi-Hmar. War is hard on everybody, but women bear the brunt of the atrocities. You've heard Dr. Fernan talk about the naked parade of the two women, but there were more rapes. May 5th, 2023, Florence Hangxing and Olivia Chongloy, who were in their early 20s, who worked at the car wash in Imphal, were taken forcibly by a mob of people into a room in the same car wash. Their co-workers recall hearing screams and shouts from that room, and they were kept there from 5 to 7 p.m. When the door opened, they were dead. Many people, witnesses, said the women, the Meitei Paibis, instigated the men to rape them because there was disinformation that was spread by Edison Moirang Them, a young man, on May 3rd, that many Meitei women were raped in Lamka, which is a Kuki-Zomi-Hmar area. That was false, but it was spread deliberately to incite the people. To this day, neither Somerjit Ningthoja, the car wash owner, or the perpetrators have been apprehended. There was a report filed, and when inquired why they were not apprehended, the police says they're absconding. Land is at the heart of the war upon the tribals. Meitei covered tribal land and have tried to usurp in multiple ways through legislative means, expansion of Indian Forest Acts, declaration of protected forests, wildlife sanctuaries, and wetlands. If they want a particular area in the hills, they just declare that it is a protected forest. But the atrocity and the barbaric nature of the attack is different from previous skirmishes that we had in Manipur. The burning of churches is unprecedented, and these are all signs that it was engineered by non-state actors. To date, 375 churches have been burnt, not one, not two, and yet, if inquired, even the government would say that they do not treat their minorities badly. We've heard the minister visit multiple countries, and when asked, he clearly stated that minorities are not badly treated. But we've seen evidence of that in multiple ways. The violence is also a product of disparities in power, wealth, and long-simmering tension over the land that have afflicted Manipur throughout its history. Mobs, by definition, are not organized, but not those mobs on May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. They knew exactly where to go, and they knew which houses had to be attacked and which houses had to be left intact, because they're either too close to Meitei homes or they belong to non-Kuki-Zomi-Hmar. In fact, from January of 2023, the Imphal Municipal Corporation had sent surveyors in mixed areas in Imphal to go and do surveys under the guise of unique identification numbers for homes. They did that, and they also marked homes. Later, we realized that was the reason why the mob was so effective, where the mob was so clear on which houses to target and which houses to leave. Out of the 60,000 or more displaced, the minority Kuki-Zomi-Hmar are over 40,000 displaced, disproportionately higher, even though we're only 16% of the population. Out of the 200 dead, ours are 176, again, disproportionate. When they burned our churches, when they violated our religious freedom, when they burned our churches, they violated our religious freedom. When they looted our belongings, drove us away like animals, and burned over 7,000 homes, they violated our right to housing, our freedom of movement and residence. When they killed our sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, they took away their right to life, physical integrity, and security. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. It is time the U.S. speak up for us. Congress must raise the human rights violation and genocide of the minority Christians in Manipur on the floor of U.S. Congress. For the staffers who are here, I'm speaking directly to you. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. It is time to break the sound of silence. It's time for U.S. to say something about this. It's time the U.S. stops sitting on the fence. Thank you.